So today's hot topic, the business of land surveying. And our presenter today is Doug Kondor, Director of Cyanic Automation. So Doug, take her away with your presentation today, and I'll see you at the end. I'm going to turn off my mic and let you have full control here. Take it away.
Okay, thank you, Ross, and thank you, Eclipse College, for allowing me to speak here. Yeah, so I guess we can just get started. The Business of Land Surveying by Cyanic Automation. So why are we all here? Let me first tell you folks a story. But before, let me quickly tell you a little bit about myself. I used to run a small field service company with a couple of crews, and I currently have an Edmonton-based software company. We sell software to help surveyors run their operations. We've worked with surveyors for a little over 5 years now. So having worked with surveyors for a little over 5 years and trying my best to understand the business of land surveying, I've been told and I've come to the realization that as a group, land surveyors are not good business people. Now, mind you, I'm sure you people listening to me right now, you're great business people. I'm just talking as a whole. Now, I've understood that the reason for this, in part, is because surveying is a very technical field, and you use your technical skills to solve problems. I know no one can do what you do, and for the most part, I've seen how you all love what you do, at least on the technical side. The issue is, though you're great on the technical side of things, the business side of things is really hard. All the business stuff are things you don't want to be doing. It's boring, tedious, it takes away from the stuff you really love. But let me tell you the impact of what we see. So companies should be making a lot more money than what they're making. And what happens when you don't make enough money? On the micro side of things, well, you can't pay for your staff enough. You can't pay your staff enough. Salaries stagnate, and you can't pay to get good talent. And everything becomes a lot harder than it should be. On the macro side of things, less people enter into the profession and go elsewhere to look for more lucrative professions. So what I've done here with this course is I found what I consider to be the best practices running a survey company. And this is what I want to share with you. I'm hoping that a rising tide will lift all boats. So that's a little bit about me. I don't know if you guys can see in chat here, but besides there's some links here to the Google Drive for Eclipse College, but there's also a couple straw polls that I've put into this, and there are just some general questions about the background of everyone here and kind of what size of organization everyone is coming from, just so I have an idea of who I'm speaking with. Okay, so it's good to kind of get an idea. It looks like we have people from all over. We have 1 to 5 people from 1 to 5 type companies, 26 to 50, and 50 to 100, and even 100 plus. So that's good. I wasn't sure if there was going to be any kind of students or people who actually aren't like working for a company currently, so I put in some NAs there. But yeah, okay, that's awesome. So I don't want you guys to listen to me because I'm an expert land surveyor. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm not an expert at land surveying. I don't even want you to listen to me because I'm an expert at business, because I'm definitely not that either. Why you should listen to me is because I've researched, I've listened, and I've worked with survey owners. I've listened and understood their issues, and I've distilled knowledge from expert land surveyors and expert business people into this presentation. And to be honest, sometimes as an outsider, getting the outsider's perspective is very valuable. My goal is to convince existing and future land surveyors that there is a better way to conduct your business. So the outline of the course is as follows. We're going to go over the rules to live by. This is the gospel according to Dan. He's a lifelong surveyor, and he's way smarter than I am. We can talk about some of his rules and what you think of them. When it comes to the rules, I've taken Dan's rules word for word and put them into this presentation. I encourage you all to ask questions and challenge the rules that he's laid out. Then I'll talk about some of the problems, some of the common problems that I've seen companies have. And finally, we'll end with practical solutions. We'll be looking at some practical solutions I've seen companies use to solve some of the business challenges. I'll compare all the solutions and give you a pros and cons for using each solution. You'll see there isn't a one-size-fits-all. There are multiple solutions out there. I'm just looking to educate you on them. So on to the next slide. So this is the guy who literally wrote the book about the business of land surveying. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with him or not. Maybe you are. You can put it in the chat if you are. If you've heard of this fellow before or not. If you want to know more about him, you can contact me after the class, and I can give you free links to his PDF book. The majority of this section is a distillation of what Dan wrote in the Management Handbook for Land Surveyors. So when talking about these rules, I'm speaking using Beardslee's voice. And just remember, I'm just the messenger, so to speak. So don't take any great offense on the things that he said. Please note that though these rules are not in order, all these rules are related to each other, and some are grouped in themes. I'll also leave time after every slide for questions or challenges to the rules. I encourage you all to both defend and attack, what he's saying, and we'll go from there. So on to rule number 1. So rule number 1, test the market. How often have you given someone an estimate and have them say, that sounds fair, when can you get started? If you're like me, you get this uneasy feeling that something was left on the table. There is no moral, ethical, or rational reason for charging less than the product is worth. Let's say, for instance, that you're surveying the boundaries of a lakefront home valued at millions of dollars. Let's further assume that you have surveyed lots of property in the area and have good control, and the survey will really be pretty easy. Does that make it worth less? Everyone would agree that it's not. So why do we typically charge as if it were? We almost all do it because we fear that someone else will do it if we don't. But does that make sense? Think to yourself, what are surveyors? What services do we provide? What we are, in fact, is a single premium lifetime unlimited liability insurer, right? I mean, when mistakes happen, the surveyor is responsible for it. And what is the one constant insurance? What does the one constant insurance providers do every year? And if you have insurance, car insurance, or house insurance, what happens every year? They raise their rates. Now, remember, no one wants to hire a surveyor, just like no one wants to hire a dentist or a lawyer. We're just a necessary evil. And you need to be testing the market. Watch how your clients react to your pricing and make sure that a good number of them are complaining. Sure, you'll lose a few clients, but you will anyway, and it's worth it to get an adequate fee. Remember, it's impossible to charge too much. If a client accepts your price, it must be worth it. So make your customers complain. It won't hurt them, and it will help you. Okay. On to the next. Rule number 2. From the customer's point of view, if you want a job done, you can have it done fast, cheap, or good. Pick 2. If you are constantly behind, that is, not able to get work done in a timely manner, it is most likely symptomatic of a poor pricing structure. Consider this. What would happen if you doubled your rates and did half the work? Think about it for a second. What would happen if you doubled your rates and did half the work? would you make more or less money? Think about it. More or less money? The answer, of course, is that you would make nearly twice as much money. Does that surprise anyone? The reason being is you would have the same amount of revenue and somewhat more than half the cost. Now, I understand no one is willing to bet his or her business on such a tactic, of course, but the principle is sound. Test the market by raising your rates 10% and 20%, and give it a try. Don't be afraid to raise your prices and do less work. It might work out for the best. Any kind of questions about this? I know it might seem a little out there to say, raise your rates, but don't be afraid to raise your rates.
Hey, Doug, Erwin here.
Yep.
I was just going to say it's almost the opposite. I find surveyors keep charging less and less and less, and then that's what I find.
I agree. And that's what I hear from many surveyors, and that is, and we'll get to that in a little bit, a couple more slides here. But absolutely, I think you guys are charging less and less and less, and you guys have to be doing the opposite. But yeah, and I can talk about, or we'll talk about that a little bit later, because there's a couple slides here about the competition. But yeah, so with this Venn diagram, you guys all understand as a customer, you can either have it good, fast, or cheap. And of course, you can only have two of these things. If you want it good and fast, it's going to be expensive. And if you want it good and cheap, it's going to be slow. And if you want it cheap and fast, it's going to be low quality. But there's also a corollary to this when running a business. And as a company, you can either be profitable, you can have jobs that are profitable, jobs that are low risk, or jobs that are high in demand, and you can only pick two. Okay, so if you're doing jobs that are profitable and low risk, they're going to be competitive. If you're doing jobs that are in high demand and profitable, they're probably going to be risky jobs. And if you do jobs that are low risk and high demand, they're probably going to be unprofitable. Again, you can only pick two. You can't have them high demand, profitable, and low risk. That just doesn't really exist. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so rule number 3. When I talk about making money, I'm talking about making a profit. Don't confuse revenue with profit. So when I say making money, remember that I'm talking about making a profit. In speaking with surveyors, it has become clear that surveyors are generally afraid to charge enough for their services. And that is the single most important reason why few make money. The most common excuse is the worry that they will price themselves out of the market. However, upon closer examination, no one really knows what the market will bear because no one has ever tested the market. The only basis for comparison is the perception of what other surveyors are charging. Like you were talking about, everyone keeps charging less, right? If you aren't making money, it's a lot more likely you're charging too little. I have never heard of an instance where a surveyor has complained about making money because they charge too much. Have you? It's very common to hear complaints about other surveyors charging too little, however. Those who price their services low are running multiple risks. 1, they are unlikely to make any money. 2, they are likely to be perceived as a discount, aka cheap surveyors. 3, they will never attract the best help. And 4, they will be sought out by the most aggravating of clients, the bottom feeders. So you need to have some courage and charge like a professional would charge. Okay, and again, what's happening here is you're sliding into this. You're sliding away from this profitable circle into this unprofitable area, and it's no good. Rule number 4, setting your rates based on what other surveyors charge is not a rational way of pricing. Market rates are logically based on 2 things, cost and value. You as a surveyor know, or should know, what the cost of surveying is. But the value is another matter. You don't know the value of your services, and the only way to determine that is to test the market. Basing your rates on what your competitions are charging is not addressing either the cost nor the value. It's simply a reaction to the perceived market forces of competition and a completely illogical means of establishing rates, especially when you consider that they are probably basing their rates on yours. The effect of all this bullying is that rates tend to stagnate. I set my rate somewhere near yours, you set your rate somewhere near mine, and both of us complain about the competition's rates being too low. Don't set your rates based on what others are doing, because they probably are doing the same thing. Any kind of questions on this? I mean, it's kind of going to earlier to what the question was earlier about, seeing everyone's rates kind of going down. I think this is a symptom of all this, where everyone is charging their rates based on what everyone else is doing, and it's all the way down, as opposed to charging what you should be charging and forgetting about the other people. Okay. Rule number 5. Since rates are based on cost and value, it's poor practice to try to mirror the market. There's probably no reason to believe that surveyors in your area are making money, and you should take a business approach that will make you some money. So completely ignore what others are doing in terms of pricing. That sounds like a terrible strategy on the surface, because this is a free market with free market forces. But more than likely, as you will find out, clients perceive surveyors' pricing structures completely different than what we do. I've been told by companies again and again that raising rates would ruin their business and they would have no work. Well, guess what? Later they told me those high rates have had nothing but positive effects on their business. No one I have ever spoken with has regretted raising their rates. The simple fact is that surveyors seldom even begin to test the market. There are exceptions, but for the most part, we price our services well below what the market would readily accept. So test the market. It might surprise you. Rule number 6. I can't tell you how many times I've heard surveyors complain that things are slow, and if they charge more, they will have no work at all. That, I suspect, is just an excuse and a rationalization for other management problems. As far as I know, no surveying company has ever priced itself out of the market. I fully suspect that almost all surveying companies that complain about lack of work have underlying problems unrelated to the price of their services. It has been my experience that more low-priced surveyors fail in the marketplace than high-priced firms. The reason, usually, that they are low-priced firms to begin with is that that's the only way they feel they can compete. The low-priced firms are typically unresponsive to client needs and find they acquire only the clients that are looking for the cheapest surveyor. This is a vicious cycle and can lead to the destruction of the firm. Most folks have experienced the loss of work to lower-priced surveyors. I get it. It's frustrating. It's a frustrating experience at times, but over the long term, it tends to take care of itself. Once we get in the mindset that we don't want or need all the work, it's a lot easier to deal with. The low-priced surveyors get that way because they can't compete on qualifications or reputations for delivering a quality product on time. So, before you decide your prices are too high, look deeper into your underlying problems. Do you deliver constantly on schedule? Do you always communicate effectively with your clients? Do you perform as promised? Do you treat your clients as you should? This, after all, is the source of your entire revenue stream. Ask all these questions before you decide low prices are a good idea. A lack of work is probably not the result of high prices. Find the real problems and fix them. Rule number 7. As already observed, rates for surveying services tend to be set at the rate perceived to be the going rate for the area. Sure, there will be small variations, but generally speaking, surveyors are very sensitive to what the other guy is charging. The paradox here is that rates tend to ratchet one way or the other, depending on which firm in a given area is perceived as a leader. You need to be a leader, not a follower. There are followers and there are leaders, and leaders prosper while followers wallow. Someone once observed that there are people that make things happen, those who watch what happens, and those who wonder what happens. You don't have to be the biggest firm to be the leader. A small, successful practice can often set the standards. Wouldn't you rather have firms reacting to your pricing moves than have to react to theirs? Be a leader, the pack will follow. Rule number 8. In a land surveying business, there are a ton of opportunities for problems to happen, and they will all happen eventually. For the firm that wants to set itself apart from all the rest, one way is to recognize a problem and not ignore it. It is much easier to ignore problem situations and hope they will go away, but hoping problems will disappear is simply wishful thinking. It may be that even if you give it your best effort, you can't produce the desired results, but that shouldn't stop you from trying. Even if you can't get the problem solved, give your best effort and communicate that to your client. If you do your best, your client is likely to understand. You do, however, have to communicate that effort. If you don't, they'll just assume you're not trying hard enough. If you try, your client will understand. But if you don't and write it off as bad luck, that client will probably not be back. So deal aggressively with problems. Rule number 9. The easiest thing to do is ignore a problem and hope it will go away. And the hardest thing to do is deal with it immediately. There are always more pleasant things to do than deal with a problem. Clients tend to be pretty patient and understanding about problems because they have their own. But they are very happy if a problem is dealt with immediately, even if the end result is not perfect. However, if you ignore a problem, or if you make excuses for not dealing with it, clients tend to be much less patient. And whatever you do, don't make your problems the customer's problems. Problems can't be fixed soon enough. The faster they're dealt with, the better will be the result. Once a problem has been identified, it should be dealt with immediately. Find problems and fix them immediately. Rule number 10. Sounds fairly obvious, I hope. But here's a question. How do you know if you need to call the customer? It could be that things are going bad now and you wouldn't even know it. And if you don't know it, that call would be way easier and better to make now than it is in another month when you have totally passed your budget, then really have pissed off your customer. So why are companies not telling their customers sooner? Well, because they simply don't know. Let me tell you a story. Most of the surveyors we talk with that don't have a software system don't even know if they're making or losing money on a job till the end of the month after they've tabulated their hours. You should know the customer's costs in real time. There is no excuse not to, and all it does is shoot yourself in the foot if you don't. So whether you have good news or bad, get on the phone, send an email, do whatever you have to do to stay in contact with your clients. I've never heard of a customer complain about being well informed as to the progress of a job. You will also have a much lower stress levels because waiting for those unpleasant calls that you know will come is a good way to get an ulcer. So always call them before they call you. Rule number 11. In today's social network world, I think we're all aware of how offending someone can snowball into offending many, many people. Act as if you are communicating with 250 people when you don't perform, because you are. Rule number 12. Let me ask you folks a few rhetorical questions. Do you currently have any customers that owe you money? If you could collect on what's owing to you right now, would you be in a better financial shape? So why is it so hard to collect even a portion of your fees up front? Why is it standard practice for professional lawyers to charge a retainer, but for a professional land surveyor to do so is unthinkable? The usual argument I hear is that you don't want to come across as not trusting the client. But that's a weak argument. If the client is unwilling to front the money, he must not trust you to do the work to the same degree you don't trust him to pay. Sometimes it's hard to get paid. I understand. I can't prove this, but I'm pretty sure the people who will not pay you at the end of a job are the same people who would not pay you half up front at the start. So asking for some form of payment up front might save you a lot of headaches later in time. Because as you know, clients have a lot of ways of dragging out payments. If you want to make your business a cash business, get paid before you work, not after. Let your clients trust you so you don't have to trust them. And understand Rule 12 is maybe a tough one for some of you, but maybe even most for that matter. But it's really critical. Rule number 13. There's no mystery here. Almost all surveyors have accounts overdue by 90 days, 180 days, or more. The fact is that many of these accounts will never be collected. So what do? You simply write it off, right? In the meantime, you have paid all the expenses associated with doing the work. You paid your office rent. You paid your employees, paid their taxes. You paid for your equipment and all the other expenses. So essentially, you have given this client money. Now, it's one thing to lend money by giving a loan, but just giving away money is completely foolish. The idea of being in business is to make money. Remember that. So, an account you show as an asset may be a fantasy. Rule number 14. It's really hard to say no. I know that, you know that, everyone knows that. But sometimes we need to discipline ourselves to do it. We've all had clients who are simply not good clients. They're slow to pay, or chisel every dime they can, or just hard to work with. Sometimes they're unbearably demanding, or just won't recognize that you have other clients besides them. In all of these cases, we would be much better off letting someone else do their work. You don't need to finance your clients, and life's too short to put up with unreasonableness. If you send them away, they will hire someone else in your service area that is not so disciplined. You can do this automatically in some cases by obeying rules 2 and 12. If you price your services on the high side and require upfront payment, the kind of client you need the least will probably not want to deal with you. There are plenty of surveyors in every market who are willing to finance their clients and will work on the cheap. Once you're rid of these customers, you can provide a better service to the more desirable clients, and that effect tends to improve your business geometrically. You will have good clients who are willing to pay a premium price for a premium service and understand the cash flow requirements of your business. You have to perform that premium service, however. Remember what I said about these rules all being related. You cannot expect clients to pay a premium price for ordinary service, so just say no. Rule number 15. Always remember that you are selling something invisible, service. Clients generally have no idea whether you're providing a good survey or a bad survey. They don't know the difference. While you may think they're buying your expertise, that's not really true because your expertise is assumed. You are, after all, a licensed professional. It's assumed that your work will be good. That assumption is necessary because clients have no way of evaluating your work. It's also the fundamental reason why you have licensed surveyors. Sure, a nice looking map may be impressive, and a well-monumented property line looks good. But what really counts is the relationship you build with the client. I've heard from surveyors countless times that surveying, after all, is a relationship business. Clients may not know the difference between a good and bad survey, but they sure know whether it was delivered on time. That's why delivery is so important. It's perhaps the best way most clients can evaluate your services. Beyond that, they know if they were treated respectfully, calls are returned, they're kept informed on the status of their project, and if you appear to care about your work and your relationship with them. After you negotiate a contract with a client, all that is left to do is the work. Do your work well, of course, but remember that in your client's eyes, delivery is more important than a technically correct survey. So remember to get the job done on time. Rule number 16. One obvious consequence here is that you don't deserve to be paid if you don't perform. Once again, let me be clear. You don't know what a fair fee is. The marketplace determines value. Your clients will tell you whether your fee is a good value or not. A fee that is determined by the market may not seem fair to you. It sometimes happens that the costs of the survey may approach or exceed the value of the project. In such a case, no deal will be struck between client and surveyor. There will be no meeting of the minds. But once there is a meeting of the minds, however, you deserve to be paid. But you must perform. Don't expect to be paid if you don't. Again, surveying is a relationship game. Remember that you are selling a relationship as well as a survey. And if you don't do what is expected of you, you shouldn't expect to be paid. The other obvious consequence is that there must be a contract. That way, each party knows what's expected of them. In addition, if you are complying with rule number 12, you will certainly be expected to provide a written guarantee that you will perform the work requested. Rule number 12, you'll recall, is to get paid up front. Also, if a written contract is executed, then each party knows what the other is expected to do. Now, as far as an oral contract goes, just don't do it, period. I've never heard of a surveyor complain that they had a contract. I've only heard the opposite. So remember to always have a contract and perform. Rule number 17. How many times has this happened? You enter into an agreement with a client and the expectation is that you will have the work done in 2 weeks. Nearing the end of the 2 weeks, you have not completed the survey. You're rationalizing that there really isn't a fixed deadline and hoping the client won't call to remind you. Sure enough, at the end of the 2 weeks, the job is not done and the client hasn't called. Refer to rule number 10. When he does call, he is already angry and you have no good excuse. The relationship with this client proceeds downhill from there. If you can't do it, whatever reason, let the client know. More than likely, they will understand. But if you promise to do it, do it. No excuses, no rationalizing, just perform. This requires discipline, of course. If you aren't disciplined enough to live with this rule, get some discipline. Get it however you can, but get it. So just do it. Rule number 18. Remember that when I'm talking about making money, I'm talking about profit, not revenue. Here's the issue with hourly rates with an estimate. Say a prospective customer is asking you to estimate a job. You ballpark estimate it will take around 20 hours at $150 an hour. So a $3,000 job. You and the customer agree to the price. You agree to do the job, and of course you agree to let the customer know if the estimate will be exceeded. If, say, the job takes 10 hours, then you will be expected to charge the customer $1,500 for the job, unless you want to really pad those hours to be 20 hours. But what happens if the job ends up taking 40 hours? Do you think it's okay to send a client a bill for $6,000? When you quoted 300 or estimated 3,000, excuse me. If you do, odds are very good the customer will say you were supposed to let them know if the estimate was exceeded. Of course, with fog of war, you didn't know the job would go over until it was too late. So you make some lame excuse as to why you didn't. You and the client end up negotiating a settlement, usually somewhere near the original estimate, and the company eats the difference. Does this sound familiar to you? Now remember rule number 11. the surveyor just offended 250 people, and none of them will be business prospects in the future. The sad part is the next client that comes along will probably be treated the same way. So stay away from hourly rates when possible. They can kill you. Let me explain what I mean by all this. So over here, we have time and materials, okay? This yellow line here, this is the cost. This is what it's costing you to do a job. The blue line here is the price. And this is a T&M job, time and materials job, cost plus. Okay, the green line here is your profit, right? So, and just realize you're not taking the area here, you're taking just one line here. So, for example, I'll try this pen. If the job finishes over here, then this line is your profit. This differential here is how much profit you're making, okay? But it's really rare from what I've seen for people just to have a T&M job where the price can be infinite. Typically what you have is T&M with an estimate. And what happens over here is you have a ceiling, okay? And what happens with this is all of a sudden your T&M job, which you basically couldn't lose money on, now there's a lot of risk over here. There's a loss, okay? So, you know, if the job finishes here, let's say 10 hours, well, you get this much. And if it was 20 hours, you would have got that much. And if it goes longer and longer, you start getting less and less money until you're over here where you're starting to lose money, okay? And a lot of the times when people are saying they're doing T&M jobs, they're actually doing T&M with an estimate. And there's lots of risk involved in this if you go long. Rule number 19. Some would argue that making an extraordinary profit is not ethical behavior for a surveyor. I completely disagree. For the good of the profession and the good of the surveyor, profits are okay. I'll say it one more time. Profits are okay. Remember the previous situation with the estimate with hours. Say instead of the surveyor estimated $3,000 for the job, no hours, just a straight lump sum. What would happen in both scenarios? Well, in the first scenario, the job would have been completed in 10 hours, making $300 per hour without having to pad hours or staff taking their time. Not bad. In the second scenario, the company would have still taken a bath, true, but they would have lived to fight another day without alienating the customer. Remember rule number 11. You must think in terms of value of the work you do, not the time it takes you to do the work. Lump sum alone is the only way to achieve this. You need the discipline to review past jobs for profitability and the systems in place in your company that allow you to review. So if you want to make money, use lump sum fees. So let me maybe explain that a little bit more. So again, over here we have T&M. Over here, we have T&M with an estimate, and we have fixed price. Okay, with fixed price, you have this line over here like this. If the job goes over, there's still the risk over here, the loss. Same with T&M with an estimate. With just pure T&M, there is no risk at all to you, which is great, but I seldom see this as being a reality. So in this scenario, and this is why fixed price is superior to T&M with an estimate. Because you see, actually, T&M with an estimate is actually the best scenario for the customer and the worst scenario for the business, and I'll show you why. If this point over here was 10 hours, you get this much. And the same place over here, you're getting this much in profit, right? With T&M with an estimate, you're technically not getting this kind of dotted area of profit. That's going away because it was T&M all the way till the ceiling here, and then it's a loss on you. So with fixed price, you have the potential, if you finish the job faster, to make a lot of money. I'd also argue that fixed price jobs are more to the benefit of the customer too, because both you and the customer want the job to finish as fast as you can. Whereas in T&M, you want a pure T&M job. The company wants the job to go on forever, and the customer doesn't. T&M with an estimate, the customer doesn't really care. Almost the customer wants the job to go on longer and longer and longer because you're just eating the costs and the ceiling has been reached. With fixed price, you're both wanting to finish as fast as you can. With fixed price and an estimate, you actually want to hit this point right here, where this is the largest profit will come in right here, or the largest revenue will be at this point right here, and then it gets smaller and it's smaller over here. So you're trying to hit, this point in time. But with fixed price, the faster you get it done, the better. And it's good for the customer, it's good for you. Rule number 20. How many times have you met with your surveyor owner friends and they've asked you, are you busy? The question is well-intentioned, of course, and is really asking, how has business been? The two questions are quite different, however. Being busy has nothing to do with success in business. If you don't charge enough for your services, you can be busy as a bee, but make no money. If you charge a lot for your services and do few jobs, business can be very good. Don't confuse being busy with success. Go back and read these rules to help understand why. The logical extreme would suggest that you should not charge at all for your services if you want to be as busy as possible. You can't do this, of course, because it costs you money to do surveys. The other logical extreme would be to do one job each year and charge $1 billion for it, and then take the rest of the year off and sun in the Caribbean. Neither extreme is realistically possible, but they illustrate the point. So don't worry about being busy, worry about making money, okay? And again, if you look at this Venn diagram here, in profitability, low risk, and high demand, you could be sitting, your business could be sitting over here in the unprofitable and busy area without a problem. You could be busy and go bankrupt very quickly over here. You want to be up in these two areas. You want to do low risk jobs that are profitable, or you want to do profitable jobs that might have some risk involved with them. Rule number 21. So there's an old story about two hikers who've come upon a hungry bear. One fellow immediately sits down and ties his shoes. The friend says, "We'll never outrun the bear." The other guy says, "I'm not interested in outrunning the bear. I just want to outrun you." You need to identify your competition. Take a moment and think about your competition. I'll give you a couple seconds. Think about who your competition is. Now, we are always thinking of what the competition is up to. We hope they're thinking about us. When we think of the competition, we're thinking of other surveying firms, aren't we? But should we be? Are we really competing with other survey firms? We might be if we're reacting to their strategies in terms of product and price. If you can implement all the ideas and the foregoing 20 rules, you won't have to worry about that competition. I think the real competition is with ourselves and maybe even our clientele. You are, after all, competing for the client's dollars with his other needs, whatever they may be. How can we be competing with our clientele, you may ask? Before they become clients, they are prospects. It's our job to persuade them to hire us to do their work. Sometimes we need to convince them that a survey is needed when they think perhaps a survey is not needed. Sometimes the prospect is not wondering whether to hire one surveyor or another. He's trying to determine whether to hire surveyors at all. Your real competitor might be sitting in your chair or across the desk from you. Let me tell you a story about my engineering friend who works at a potash company, okay? They have a potash company, and they have a large pile of product that they need to use, and they need to know the volume of that product, how much of that product exists. And in their company, they have arguments whether they should A, hire a surveyor to figure out how much product they have, or B, go to the store, pick up a very expensive piece of equipment, and then they have that piece of equipment they can use instead of having to hire surveyors. So this is how your clients can, they can be your competition. So I'll finish with a summarization of all these 21 rules with what I call the secret ingredient. Okay, so when I read Beardslee book, it really struck a chord. I really believe in what he says and his rules. It honestly transcends land surveying and is really rules to follow for any business owner. That's why I knew they were true, and that's why I wanted to share them with all you. It's also why I left them as unedited as possible. Of course, in the end, it's up to you, the listener here, if you believe the rules, and most importantly, if you will follow the rules. I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it. So the secret ingredient is to charge what you're worth and take care of your clients. So those last 21 rules were straight out of Beardslee book, practically word for word, and I have some additional rules. Well, calling them rules might be a little presumptuous. Let's call them conventions. And I think they supplement these previous rules quite nicely. So let's get into them. So convention number 1. You need to know your job costs. Sounds fairly obvious, but I can't tell you how many surveyors I've spoken with that when asked admitted they don't know. To be clear, when I'm talking costs, I'm not talking dollars and cents. I'm talking about labor hours. Every job starts off as an estimate of the amount of time it takes to complete said job, convert it to money. And for most companies, that's where it ends. There are a few companies that go full circle and compare what the estimate is to what it actually took and why. I've also been told it is common for estimators to have not been in the field for years. A lot has changed in the last 20 years, and if the estimator isn't getting feedback for how long jobs take today, it has dire consequences. So every job you complete should be reviewed and what the actual costs of the job were. If you don't have the tools to quickly do this, get them. Hopefully this is obvious, and hopefully you guys are all have an easy way of doing this. Convention number 2, risks. I'll bring back the the 3 graphs here because I think it shows it quite nicely. As far as risks to the company, T&M jobs are by far the least risky types of jobs. I am of the opinion that few companies actually do T&M jobs though. And what they call T&M jobs are in fact T&M with an estimate, or T&M with a budget, or T&M with a quote, or T&M with a ceiling, and that isn't the same thing as you can see over here, right? With T&M with an estimate, there's a lot of risk on the company with little reward, okay? Especially compared to fixed price jobs where fundamentally, though the risk is no less, at least the reward is greater. And we saw why before, how the reward is greater, because again, the delta here is far greater than the delta here. So make sure that if you're doing a T&M job, that the customer knows your estimate is truly an estimate and not a quote. The customer really needs to know that you're giving an estimate and not a quote, because oftentimes the customer will hear estimate and assume quote. Otherwise, if you can't get them to realize that it's an estimate, make sure that you know you're in fact doing a fixed price job and act accordingly. You need to offload the risk to jobs that can't reliably be estimated. You can do this by simply raising the price on that job. If there is uncertainty in the estimate, you can at least control the risks. Beware of jobs you can't reliably estimate. If you can't reliably estimate a job, don't do the job. Get that discipline. A fixed price job you overestimate and lose is worth more than a fixed price job you underestimate and get. Does that make sense? Any questions? I think this is really important, this one. This convention is generally applied to large survey companies with many different people potentially being billed at the same line item rate, but being paid a significantly different salary. Okay, so this here would apply to larger type businesses, although it can apply to smaller survey firms. So take, for example, and this is going to be a very simple example, take, for example, a survey job where you have quoted or budgeted drafting time to take 40 hours. Drafting is $100 per hour line item. Okay, so you have a line item that's, drafting is $100 per hour and you budgeted 40 hours. For the sake of argument, let's just say drafting is the entire job. Okay, it's just one job drafting, just to keep things simple. So therefore, at 40 hours, at $100 an hour, the price of the job is $4,000. Say you have two different draft people in your pool. One has significantly more experience than the other, and for the sake of argument, makes $50 per hour. The other draft person is much more junior and has a salary of $25 per hour. If the senior employee does the job, it will take him 35 hours to complete. If the junior employee does the job, it will take him 45 hours to complete. What will the profitability of the job be, and who should we have to do the job? Okay, well, using the senior employee, we'd get $50 times 35 hours, which is $1,750. Okay, makes sense so far? So if you take that away from the $4,000, you'll get a profit of $2,250. Now, if you use the junior employee, we'll get $25 times 45 hours, and that's $1,125. Take that away from the 4,000 again, and your profit is $2,875. Now, that is a significant difference in the profit, right? You use the senior person, and you're making significantly less profit than if you use the junior person, okay? So great. Thanks a lot for Mr. Obvious here, right? Well, so what's the story here? Why are we talking about this? Well, the two issues here that companies have is project managers have typically no visibility to what staff expenses are, okay? So a PM might actually never know that this person over here was $50 and this person is $25. That's one. Two, there's not enough of a differentiation between line items. So for example, in this example here, we have one line item that's called draft person. There is no senior, junior, and a senior is $150 an hour and a junior is $100, right? There's no difference there. So in the company, you don't have enough differences between different line items. So of course, some of you might be thinking now, well, easy fix, right? We just, we'll just add more differentiation for our line items for different seniority levels, and we're all good. But ask yourself this: who picks the line items that will be billed to the customer? Right? When you're doing timesheets or when you're billing to the customer, who picks those line items? Does the staff that did the job, do they pick it? Does the PM pick it, or does the administrator pick it? Does the project manager have an interest in completing the most profitable job? Right? Is the PM actually interested in the profitability of a job? Or is he more interested in completing the job on time and on budget? Now, because the senior person did it in 35 hours and the junior person would have done it in 45 hours, if the project manager is just interested in on budget and on time, and if your budget is just hours worked, well, then he's going to pick the senior guy, and you're actually, as a company, going to make less money. And this is a problem. So, do you have any systems in place that can bring visibility to these issues to people who can actually, and to people who can actually do something about them? So this is just food for thought. These type of problem, my friend calls kind of high-class problems, right? But anyhow, let's move back down to kind of less complicated problems, and I'll talk about the solutions in a second. So First problem. How do you make money as a surveyor? You need some way of keeping track of your time. There are lots of companies tracking time on paper. How do you know if everything was submitted? How do you know if everything was submitted to the right codes? How do you know what equipment was used on a job? How do you catch mistakes in what was submitted? How do you stop time from coming in late? How do you know any of these things? What are the implications if you don't do any of this? We know for a fact, talking with people, that without a system keeping track of this and a workflow, the basic fact is you'll get underbilling and lose control of job metrics. Also, the other thing here is if you don't have a good system to track time to projects, this is going to make your administrator's life hell and cause problems with invoicing later. Okay, so make sure you have a system for keeping track of your time and equipment. So once you figured out time and equipment tracking, the next obvious step is doing job tracking. How do you know what projects are due? What is the priority of jobs? What are the health of jobs that are in flight? When a customer calls, how do you know how far along a project you are? Or if you're even over budget? I can't tell you how important it is to be able to budget out a job and see in real time how much you're spending and how close you are to completing a job, because nothing ever goes according to plan. And at some point, you'll be able to see that you're going to go over the estimate for the job and you'll need more money. No one likes making that phone call to the customer, but tell you what, making that phone call now instead of waiting till the end of the month when time is tallied up and you get this big surprise, it's way better to make the call earlier. So you need a way of tracking how your jobs are doing. Another thing, you need a way to learn from all your past experiences. Think for yourself, how do you keep track of all your old jobs? And how do you keep track of what kind of jobs they were? Do you have a system that you can tell who worked on what job? Do you know like who has experience in certain types of jobs? Do you know who your best customers are? Do you know what type of jobs are most profitable? These are all really important questions. You need a system that can answer these questions. So the amount of time it takes to invoice your customers is critical to your success. If you're ever doing a fixed price job, then the time it takes to invoice shouldn't be very long. But if you're doing T&M jobs, and especially T&M with an estimate, things get interesting. What are all the hours to this project that you need to invoice for? What are all the hours you need to invoice since my last milestone? Did you already invoice these hours? If you have a lot of staff submitting timesheets, sorting all the hours out can be very frustrating and an error-prone process. How long does this process take? Think, every day of delay for invoicing is money that you don't have. It hurts your cash flow. If you don't have a system that can help you automate invoices, you're going to have big problems. Now, over here is a list of some of the issues I've heard surveyor owners and staff talk to me about. And these are all the questions you should be asking yourself when it comes to running your own business. How are you managing your customers? How are you reviewing your costs? How do you know what jobs are profitable? How is any of your staff accountable? How do you manage your jobs? And how can you scale your operation? You should have answers to all these questions, and if you don't have answers, and when I say answers, I mean, can you point to a system in your organization that solves these questions? Then you need to find solutions to these problems, or you'll not be able to grow your operation. Talking to many survey companies, I've seen basically 5 solutions, some better, some worse. So in no particular order, let's talk about some of these solutions. Now, the first solution here is status quo. Just keep using your standard office tools. Okay, so things like Word, pen and paper, Excel, Outlook, basically information on your customers are in the head or in emails. Timesheets are on paper, invoices are in Excel, and job data is literally in someone's head or maybe a text message. Historical jobs are on a map in the office with pins. This solution works for a company with up to maybe 1 or 2 crews and gets more and more unstable once you get more and more project managers. The breaking point with this type of system is typically when trying to grow, you will require hiring an additional administrator just to handle all the quote-unquote paperwork. Or the other breaking point is when the husband, wife, son, or daughter has simply had enough. The other solution here is an accounting solution. Now, most often an accounting system is one of the first formal systems in a survey company to help manage the business, right? I mean, you're running your business, you got to do your taxes every year, and your accountant is probably going to make you get some sort of accounting system. Pretty common. Solutions can be QuickBooks, Simply Accounting, or any other off-the-shelf accounting packages. There are plugins for these things that might be used to allow for timesheets to be entered digitally. Information such as customer information, costing information would be stored in the accounting system. Profitability can be calculated, but it's not easy. Issue with using accounting packages is typically the only people with access to pertinent data are the accountants, right? Not everyone in your organization is going to have access to this accounting system. Estimators, project managers, office administrators, and others would either not have access, or because the software is accounting centric, would not have the skills to get the answers from the software they need. Typically, job management is also not handled by the accounting system. The solution is quite common and works for a company optimistically up to about 15 people in size. Sustainability issues typically lies in accountability for staff and job management. Ironically, the breaking point for companies is a financial one. Without estimators, project managers, and administrators having the ability to access and view data, profitability becomes an issue. So that's the issue with accounting software. The third solution is using a project management system. These systems often augment your accounting system. They're used in conjunction with your current accounting system. There are many solutions available to use. These are just 3 of them that are on your screen, and they're designed specifically for surveying companies. All these systems should be able to do customer management, time and equipment tracking, job management, and let you see old jobs and handle all the idiosyncrasies that exist in the surveying world. This solution works great for companies of practically any size. We've seen companies that are, one-man shows use this type of software, and we've seen companies with hundreds of people use this and do it just fine. The fourth solution is an ERP system. Now, I'm not going to dwell too much on them or even really tell you what an ERP means. I really don't know what I can really say about these systems besides their reputation usually precedes them, and it's not usually a good reputation. Usually, I see this in kind of larger companies, and especially companies whose primary business is not surveying. So, for example, if you're a business unit in an engineering company, you might be exposed to these type of systems or forced to use them. If you know anyone using, SAP or Deltek or Microsoft Dynamics, you can talk with them and they can tell you what they feel about them. The fifth and last solution I've seen is a custom software solution. So where do I begin with this? So survey companies use a lot of, survey equipment, right? And survey equipment is very expensive. I don't need to tell you guys. There are companies that spend millions of dollars on equipment. So why give companies like Leica, Nikon, or Spectra all your hard-earned money? Think about it. Why would you do that? Why not manufacture your own survey equipment? Think about it. Who knows better about survey equipment than you, the surveyors? Think about all the bad equipment you used. If you could build your own, think about how much better life would be. And think about all the money you'd save. It's really simple, right? Hire some in-house engineers, and I'm sure within 3 to 6 months, you should have better equipment than what exists today. Okay, you got me. I was just kidding about that, okay? That's clearly, I'm hoping, clearly that you all think this is a bad idea, right? Building your own survey equipment, that doesn't make any sense, right? It's probably gonna take more than 3 to 6 months, and it's probably gonna cost a lot of money, right? Okay, so, but anyway, maybe that was a bit of a derail there. So let's talk about some custom software. Now, survey companies need software to help run their business, and that software is very expensive. These companies, there are companies that spend tens of thousands of dollars a year on software. So why give companies like myself your hard-earned money? Why not create your own survey software? Think about it. Who knows better about survey software than you, the surveyor? Think about all the bad software you've used. If you could build your own, think about how much better life would be. Think about all the money you'd save. Simple, right? Hire some in-house programmers, and I'm sure within 3 to 6 months, you should have better software than what exists today. Wait, I might have just repeated myself, didn't I? And I hope you could see that perhaps custom software might not be the wisest move. And I can get more into that in maybe the next slide. So this is just a side-by-side comparison on all the 5 examples here. So just as an overview here, office tools, okay? Using your office tools like Word, pen and paper, what have you. This is how we track it. So it's the flexibility here is very high. The ease of use is very high because everyone knows how to use pen and paper, and Excel they can pretty much handle. The utility I would say is low because when you have everything in pen and paper, you can't really do much with that. It's very time consuming. You can't really query it or look at things like that. And the cost is low or free if your time isn't worth anything. So if maybe you have children in the business that you can get free labor from, then yes, it would be free. Otherwise, it actually is quite expensive. The next solution is an accounting solution. The flexibility is medium. Ease of use, we would say, is low. Most of these systems are made for accountants or bookkeepers, and anyone else has a really hard time using the software. Utility is medium, and the cost is medium. This price down here, $300 per month, plus $15 per kind of user. It can be less, it can be more, but that's kind of like a roundish number that from my research. The next solution here is PM software. So flexibility is high because it's made for surveyors. Ease of use is high because it's, again, made for the surveying world. Utility is high, and the cost is medium. I can't speak for all the other software, but I know for JobBook, for our system, we charge $150 per company plus $15 per employee. So a 10-man operation is going to cost you $300 a month. An ERP system. The flexibility, an ERP system can do anything if you throw enough money at it. Ease of use. From experience, no one seems to like ERP systems. Utility can be high because, again, it can kind of do anything. But again, the costs are high. These numbers down here, $100,000 to get started plus $2,000 a month, that's really on the low side. If you're using something like SAP, I think SAP, don't quote me on this, you're talking $500,000 a year just to get a phone call back from them. And you're probably looking at, $10,000 a month to just maintain it. And we already kind of talked about custom software. Look, custom software it's totally flexible, should be easy to use, utility should be high, but the cost is very high. Basically, what you need to do is hire a programmer. So that means you're paying between $50,000 a year to $100,000 a year, and you're paying that for the rest of your life. And that breaks down to $5K a month or $10K a month even. Any questions about this kind of landscape? Almost done here, FYI. So also, like, you know, being in industry here, I just wanted to point out some of our friends and resources out there in the metaverse, as they call it nowadays. So there's this really nice podcast called The Geoholics. They're really good guys. They're funny. They're entertaining. You can listen to them. They're on YouTube and they have a podcast, like I was saying. And once in a while, they do content on the business of land surveying. You guys should check them out. There's also on LinkedIn, if you do a search for the business of land surveying, that's a group that we created. Anyone listening to this, if you go onto LinkedIn and search for this group, ask to join, and I guarantee you we'll let you in. And there's some forums out there that you can be using that have useful information. This one, the Land Surveyors United, is run by Justin Farrow. He's a really great guy, and he's really committed to helping out the surveying community. So check that out when you get a chance. And finally, I can end over here with any final questions. That's my email. Feel free to email me. Feel free to phone the office. We're located in Edmonton, Alberta. That's our website for our product, Get Job Book. And in the chat, I can also I can. Oh no, I can't. Maybe not. I'll post that in the chat right away here. Just the information so you guys have it also. But yeah, any questions? Feel free to ask.
Do we have any questions for Doug? Don't hesitate to open your mic and give him a chat.
Thanks.
Wow. That was very good. I was quite impressed. I've been around for a long time, so.
What did you think?
You've indicated you're all hit home quite closely, so. That's one of the reasons I've been in business for, I don't know, probably 35, 40 years or more. So, and it's quite challenging. But yeah, I think the key to my success was building businesses, building relationships, building relationships with businesses and stuff like that. So I think that, and you hit right on the key there. So